Dr. Aysha Wazwaz answers. I'll give, we'll go from there. Sounds good? Okay, so I'll start off with you guys, since you guys are live. Does anyone have a question they want to begin with? Sorry.
Do you need the mic?
Yeah, sure, please. Don't worry, I'll figure it out.
My question is,
Go ahead.
my question is regarding when you're making ghusl. Me and I were talking about it recently.
Can you raise your voice, please?
Is it better now?
Yes, it's better.
Okay. My question is regarding when you're performing ghusl. Some people say like you can wash your hair with braids in, and some people are like, no, your hair has to be fully washed. And then I always, because I learned how to make ghusl off of WikiHow, I just like want to confirm if that is proper, if you can do it like that. And then also in terms of, I believe like the third step when you're making wudu, are you washing your feet then, or do you wash your feet at the end of the ghusl when you're getting ready to like make yourself flog to pray? So that's what is my question.
So, first of all, Assalamu alaikum. Because we have a lot of questions, I'm going to try as much as I can to make the answers summarized. So when we actually speak about the place, where did the place of confusion actually happen? Do you actually unbraid your hair if you're actually making ghusl or not? Right? I'm going to tell you the differences of opinions between scholars and lay them out for you, and then I'm going to give you the preponderant. That way I can make it easy for you. So the reason for the differences of opinions between scholars is really because there are actually one group of scholars that regarded that if you are making ghusl for a major impurity, that you actually have to unbraid your hair. Now, then this group of scholars, they basically went into two different opinions on whether the major impurity is referring to a major impurity due to cycle or whether the major impurity is due to janaba. So the first group of scholars, they regarded that if it's a ghusl due to janaba, that you have to unbraid your hair. The second group of scholars, they actually said only if we're talking about braiding the hair, it doesn't matter whether that was due to ghusl from janaba or whether that was actually ghusl from cycle. That's the same thing. What is the preponderant? The preponderant is that you don't have to unbraid your hair, whether that is due to janaba or due to ghusl from cycle. The evidence on that is that when Sayyidah Aisha, when she heard that Amr ibn al-As was actually doing the fatwa that you have to unbraid your hair, she, that is a Sayyidah Aisha, got angry and she said, هَلَّا أَمَرَهُنَّ بِحَلْقِ رُؤُوسِهِنَّ? Why not just let them shave off their heads? She got so angry and she said, I was actually going into a state of janaba and I would be in a state of janaba and I would not unbraid my hair. And therefore, those group of scholars, they said, there's no difference. Whether it was due to janaba or whether it was, janaba actually means a state of after intercourse and before taking a shower, right? So they differentiate between whether due to janaba or whether it was due to a cycle. You don't have to unbraid your hair. But I am familiar with the opinion that differentiated between janaba and cycle and regarded that cycle is easy because it's once a month anyways. So unbraid your hair. And then to respond, I hope I responded to the question. Yes. All right. So if there's another question, I'd be happy to answer it, inshallah. Before we head to the floor. Muna, how are you doing, my dear?
My question is regarding sexual assault. So
sexual assault?
Yeah. So
okay.
Trigger warning for anybody who doesn't want to be in the room. So there's something really tricky about when it comes to sexual assault, where the situations become it's either the victim's voice versus the person who's being accused, right? And so there's times when people come up to me and they say, oh, you can't say that a person has been accused because that's slander in Islam. And so the other nuance is that the way women are able to protect themselves, and especially if something happened to you, you should being able to say, hey, this person did something to me, it almost seems like it's a sin. and it almost feels like you are accusing the person's honor, and somehow in the community, when you are sitting down and you're watching a situation in which a victim speaks up, you almost, some people say, oh, try to use the religion to say that, oh, this person shouldn't say anything until it's proven, or I, as a community member, shouldn't engage with this entire discussion until there's some evidence that clearly show that the allegations are true, hence calling the victim a liar before anything. So it's like, it's a really tough situation. So my question is about that aspect. Is stating the fact that a person has allegations against them, is that considered slander?
So this question is actually going to a number of different sections. Let's call it that way. Number one is that when we're actually speaking about assault, the victim has the right to seek protection. And what we mean by that is to actually seek protection through the different areas that are capable of protecting you. Okay. Now, having that being said, when we actually look at, okay, if this is a victim, how do I know if it's a victim? Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. It's not an issue of me too, and therefore you just have to trust me. Everyone is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. You have to bring evidence to prove that you have been assaulted. You have to bring evidence. We can't necessarily just take it because I said it. Everyone is proven innocent. Everyone's innocent, until proven guilty. Now, having that being said, when we actually look at the Me Too and all of those different things that are right now rising in where, yes, you have to believe me. How is that going to be? You're basically making the victim even become a bigger victim. You just have to believe. At the end of the day, is that we have to consider a certain number of different things in regarding law. In regarding law, everyone is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and therefore the victim, if they are assaulted, it doesn't mean they create another assault. If we are to open the door in where every single person is going to stand up and actually say, hey, I'm a victim and you have to believe me, because if you don't, then that means you're basically here attacking me. We have to say, well, no, we don't want to attack you, but we want to ensure everyone's rights are in place. We definitely want to ensure your rights, but we still need evidence to support your claim. We can't necessarily just say, I'm going to believe you, because they could become a victim too. Because that person that you're accusing may also be a victim. Maybe you're a liar. I can't just take it because you're crying. We can't necessarily make someone else a victim. So Islam tells you, wait a minute, you need evidence. تشهد على الشمس وإلا فدع. You either witness, like you could see the sun, or you leave. Now, that's when, if you're a victim of sexual assault, well, contact the authorities and they'll do the different necessary things to make sure that you are actually protected, you are actually given the different means to prove either your innocence or whether you are really a victim, etc. So that's a whole different thing. But at the end of the day, we can't necessarily base it off that, yes, you just have to accept because someone said. So, got it? Did I answer the question?
No, that was
No?
completely not my question.
Okay, what's your question?
I think a lot of times it gets down to that case of like, if a woman, like say somebody sexually assaulted me, oftentimes there's the evidence that people look for, it's impossible to have because nobody expects that. So it becomes circumstantial in a way where it's like, it comes down to what I said happened and what another person said happened, right? So in that situation, as a community person, to if a person has been accused, for me to say that this person has been accused, not to decide whether they have done it or haven't done it. I'm not saying that, but the mere fact of stating that this person has been accused is that.
So if the person is a victim, what they have to do is actually go through the routes of actually seeking the authorities to get involved or the different means. It's not about spreading the idea. Because even if you were to spread it, that's not what's going to help you. What's going to help you is to actually have authorities to be there to support you. So it's not by, yeah, I'm going to tell everyone about it. Everyone is not going to help you. It's actually, who are you telling? It's not about telling everyone. What happens many times is that this girl or this woman is basically telling every single person, this happened to me, this happened to me. And then it becomes she, for going and knocking at the wrong door, ends up becoming from being a victim to being the person that's assaulting. And that's a major mistake. So even if you are a victim, you have to know the procedure to actually help you get your rights in place. To actually do it the wrong way might actually end up you becoming in jail. You want to make sure you're doing it right. There are certain limits that only officials and only people in authority have the right to knock on and have the right to do. So even if you were to actually say such things, not only by Islam, but even by the government, even by a secular government, they're going to say, well, you're right now here causing slander, and you will be actually asked to pay the fine, even though you could have been really a victim, but you did it in the wrong way. There are certain protocols that you have to do things right, because if you do it wrong, you will actually flip the whole coin against your own self. And that happens a lot. And where she wants to protect herself, but she does it the wrong way. She goes in the wrong corner. So there are certain things you have to know how to do things right, or else if you want to take the law in your hands, the law officials will tell you, you stepped on the wrong corner.
I feel like you're answering about victim. For me, I'm talking about as a community person. So say my sister is about to get married to somebody, right?
Mhm.
For me to say this person has had allegations against them, we don't know if it's true or not. Is that considered? That's my.
So if this is basically speaking about the person, the best thing, according to Al-Ghazali, is to say, I don't recommend this person, and that's it.
So
Because
not
you
to
don't
explain
really
it.
know the truth of whether this person did actually do an assault or not. Got it? Go ahead, my dear.
We're gonna have our first Slido question, and it is, how do we keep our Islamic values when voting, or should we not vote at all in the United States?
So voting is actually a very important thing to do. I am not against voting. I am pro-voting if we actually have, we actually have a number of different things in place. But what I am really concerned about is that a lot of Muslims, they're actually going for voting. And here's what happens. You've got a lot of Muslim women that are right now not only active in DNC, but they had wholeheartedly embraced everything that DNC stands for. Whatever happened from you were trying to make and defend a Muslim word, a Muslim name, to then jumping and embracing everything that DNC stands for. So right now we're seeing Muslim women actually pro-abortion, Muslim women actually pro-feminism, Muslim women pro-liberalism, Muslim women pro-LGBT by all means. Is that what standing for DNC means? We have lost the ABCs of understanding our identity. We have become from activists and from using the channel of DNC, for example, to protect Muslim rights, to actually using DNC as the place of our aqidah. This is extremely dangerous. And that's what happened a lot of times, is that Muslim women, and I mean Muslim women, mashallah, I mean, doing great and active da'iyat and etc., are right now standing to actually say, I stand for abortion because that is justice. La ilaha illallah. And who are these? They're basically Muslim women hijabis. These women are actually the ones to be invited to speak in conferences and big conferences that would have 50 and 30,000 people that are attending. What's happening is really scary. Because if we can't differentiate between what was a tool and forgetting that the tool, the channel of voting was supposed to be a tool. We lost our focus and we thought that this tool was really us. We forgot that no, this was supposed to be a tool, not that we embrace everything. And right now we're starting to have, believe it or not, this is so funny, you guys. I don't mean funny by actually meaning that it's worth laughing about. Believe it or not, I'm actually a chaplain at St. Catherine University. The MSA are the ones that actually asked that I would step down from being their advisor because they wanted to be inclusive and had a Buddhist actually be the advisor for the MSA. This is ridiculous. And by the way, by all means, don't think that I'm necessarily caring about being at all the advisor. But if we can't figure out our slogans, we can't figure out our place of aqidah, we're in big trouble. We're in big trouble. We can't tell the difference between a channel to something and between our final destination or what we're getting to. That's where that confusion in the different slogans is really taking us. We're actually having Muslim women that are really confused about what is the purpose? What is the channel? What am I doing? And they actually embraced all the different terms for the DNC because they heard that the LGBT was actually pro-Palestine. So they thought, hey, these people are pro-Palestine. So because they're pro-Palestine, I have to defend them. You sold your la ilaha illallah that easy? I'd rather, by all means, uqsim billahi al-azim, I'm Palestinian. I'd rather have the Israeli occupation than actually have the Palestinian Authority. Swear to God. Than the Palestinian Authority. At least I'll get Kubat Halim and the Israeli. Swear to God. At least I'll get medical health insurance through the Israeli government. It works a lot better than the Palestinian Authority. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, if we don't recognize that La ilaha illallah is our main place of aqidah, is our main center, we really have everything confused. It's not about defending Palestine. It's not about a slogan. It's what the slogan carries in kufr, what the slogan carries in deviation, what the slogan carries in terms of illicit behavior, etc. You have to differentiate. If you cannot differentiate those corners, you've got those areas in the gray area, and you're letting political correctness deceive you, wallahi al-azim, we're in danger. Because guess what? You know what? Dajjal, this is real. Dajjal actually comes at a time where there's going to be drought. You know what that means? Dajjal will come in with an agenda that, hey, I'm going to bring in prosperity. Hey, I'm going to bring in peace. I'm going to bring in economical prosperity, political prosperity. I'm going to bring all this good stuff of dunya. And it will be promoted as a narrative of success. How are you going to challenge that if we couldn't challenge what is even a lesser, way less fitna than the Dajjal? It's way less fitna than the Dajjal. And we We simply got deceived by a narrative and a slogan that it's protecting women's rights, it's protecting our bodies, it's protecting Palestine, it's protecting human choices, orientation. Ya Allah. If we easily got deceived by these slogans, you think that Dajjal is not going to use these same slogans? Oh, you better believe he will. They're going to be given beautiful names too, by the way. They're going to be given beautiful names, just like today they're given beautiful names where they seem very scientific, very educational, very smart. We got to be careful. If we're not figuring those out, we're really lost. So in terms of voting, I am pro-voting, but I would say at the same time, while you're working on voting, and I think I voted every single time, that we clarify that yes, okay, I will vote for Ilhan Omar, but I am totally against the kufr that she's committing. Kufr, why are you calling it kufr? By actually promoting LGBT, promoting abortion, promoting feminism. That's, believe it or not, the fitna that Ilhan Omar, Linda Sarsour had actually brought was actually more than any other group has brought. Because when the fitna comes in a halal label, you will easily consume it. You will easily consume it. You don't care to read the ingredients. You'll easily consume it. It says halal. It becomes very deceiving. She's wearing hijab. Look, you'll easily consume it. Go ahead, my dear. 1 minute, that's okay. Go ahead. I can't see from far, but that's okay.
We'll do one more slide of questions before we open up to the audience. And this is kind of like a two-parter. Is how can we uphold our Islamic values without compromising our education in the workplace in terms of liberal education and LGBTQ issues?
You know the most important thing? قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say, I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do what is right. Don't be afraid. And always be firm that Islam is different. Speak up. If you can't, أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةٌ فَتُهَاجِرُوا فِيهَا. If you can't, leave. Leave the place of fitna. Because wallahi al-azim, it's not worth it. Wallahi, I would rather be selling spices in a city, in a village in Africa, than actually be living in a mansion where I can't protect my deen. Uqsim billahi al-azim, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. A couple morsels of food are enough to keep you alive. Wallahi, a couple morsels of food. It's not about the money. It's not about the degrees. You can have a degree and wallahi al-azim, nothing but indoctrination, and a person's empty. So what we really need to get is really stay firm. Say what is haqq. If you cannot say what is haqq, at least don't say what is batil. If you can't say what is haqq, at least do not say what is batil. But don't promote batil because you're afraid you might lose your job. Stand up. I'm different. Stand up. I'm different. I hope I answered that.
We'll open up to the audience now.
Go ahead, my dear.
Sorry.
Why come say?
Workplace, I'm the I was able to stay home with my children for 6 years. And I just went back to the workforce and I noticed that now a lot of the email signatures are using pronouns. Should we, I'm just confused about that. I didn't use anything, but I noticed like a lot of people were even against LGBT are saying that please call me she, her, or that's it.
Don't normalize that. Don't normalize that. And when you are asked, say it directly. That Islam, just use your name. And when you're asked pronoun, etc. Sorry, everyone, my respect. But in Islam, we actually believe that God Almighty created everything in justice, and He created everything in good. And Islam is against anyone manipulating the truth. We will not normalize these pronouns, because once we actually look at normalizing these pronouns, then you're going to go to another step. What is it? you're actually putting in and embracing and normalizing and propagating. You will become the person to propagate that delusion. You will be the person to propagate and normalize the new culture in where it's not about the reality of things, it's about creating a new reality. So what is to create a new reality? It's to create that truth is not necessarily how it was created. Truth is about making it up. It's recreating facts on ground by using a narrative, by using a new interpretation. So say it strong and loud. Strong and loud. And guess what happened? I actually did that in my university. They wanted to invite me. They definitely knocked at the wrong door. They basically invited me for some queer LGBT. I forgot what it was. So I declined. So my boss, she basically knew that, she's gonna explode something. So I basically said, well, by all means, you wanna fire me? Go ahead. This is what Islam says about this. And Islam basically embraces the whole thing in recognizing the beautiful creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. And it's not whatsoever containing any discrepancies. And that we have to embrace reality and understand how we interpret reality with the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us. We embrace that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the world in the best of creation. And therefore, once we recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything in the best of creation, we basically embrace that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything with His grace. So therefore, I would like to tell you, you want to fire me, go ahead. But I will not join these things. They're against my religion, because they're against my vision, because they're against my belief in justice. I don't believe that this is considered whatsoever reflecting or even portraying justice. This is portraying injustice, because I would be engaged in the ABC of manipulating you, manipulating myself. And in Islam, it tells me to live in truth and propagate truth, not propagate whatsoever manipulation, even if the whole world wants to normalize narrative. I will not normalize a narrative of manipulation. Lakum dinukum waliya din. You've got your religion, I've got my religion. Simple and straightforward. Guess what happened? The head of the university people, they basically said, thank you very much. And this is actually what Catholicism stands for, since it's a Catholic university. Thank you very much. And it actually embraced it. And every single time they would recognize that, hey, she's basically that person that stood up to actually say that. And later on, they basically, every single time, they would say, oh yeah, we remember. Say it. Wallahi al-azim, they know it. Wallahi al-azim, they know it. But it's an issue of being afraid to speak it. You be the person to say it out. You be the person to announce it. How come the conservative Christians, they would have more guts than a Muslim that says La ilaha illallah to actually speak against this? Jordan Peterson, by all means, is actually standing up to speak against it, and you're afraid. Andrew Tet, whatever the guy's name is actually right there speaking up, and he's not afraid for all those millions. By all means, I don't even have probably just his phone bill to pay for. All right? No, stand up strong and high. Stand up strong and high. You be the person to speak it up. You be the person to speak it up. And that's what the whole thing, the legacy of all the prophets is all about. Say, I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then take the path of haqq. Don't be afraid. Say it loud and clear. They'll get used to you. In the beginning, they'll be like, uh-oh, she dared to say it. But then later on, they're like, okay, yeah, okay, so she can say it. Okay, I'll say it too. You'll do your da'wah. I hope I answered that one.
So I had this question had like a couple of.
Can you raise your voice, my dear? Can you like put the microphone closer to
Yeah,
you?
can you guys hear me? Is it better? Okay. So I grew up in a very like cultured household, right? So what most of like the things that I knew from cuisine was like from my parents. A couple things that, for example, my mom taught me like from a young age was like, I accepted those things too. It was like things like, like nose piercings are not okay, for example.
Like
or
what? Nose piercings are not okay?
Yes, like
Okay.
nose piercings, like weaves, like box braids, like stuff like that are not okay. And then like I feel like the more I grew up, and then I don't know, like there's just like I don't like normalize, is that what it is? I don't know. So I've met a lot of people, and now like there's so many different opinions like around topics that I feel like it's either yes or no, and it's really confusing as like a Muslim girl. Like also like I'm an adult now, right? Like inshallah, a couple of years I'll have kids. Like what do I tell my daughters? You know, when they ask me these kind of questions, things like nose piercings, fake lashes. There's just so many things. Like in the beauty society, like as a Muslim woman, like how do we like deal with those things? Like if that makes sense.
So I understand. So there are actually two sets to the question. Number one is that do our parents actually speak more of Islam? In other words, the culture, our parents' culture, is that closer to Islam than our culture? That's one question. Number two, is a nose piercing necessarily halal? Okay, so the first side of it is that, believe it or not, let's go back to a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ actually said that every generation that comes, the generation that came before, is actually better than the later generation. Let's continue. That's number one. Number two is that the culture that your parents come from, you would normally think that it's just a culture. The reality and the truth of the matter is, if you were to trace the etymology, or let me say, trace the different actions, even in sociology, where does that perspective, that behavior actually come from? Most likely, it actually has Islamic roots in it. Most of it. 80% of it actually goes back to Islam, believe it or not. And that's why it's really interesting to actually see, for example, when I would scrutinize the Pakistani Indian cultures, I would see a lot that goes back to the Hanafi. If I were to see the Somalis, it goes back to Shafi'i. If I were to scrutinize Malaysian and Indonesian, I would see Shafi'i right there. If I were to scrutinize North Africa, I would see Maliki, without you recognizing. Now, as a specialist in fiqh, I'd be able to see the traces. Literally see the traits, like, oh, I see where this is coming from. But the part that you normally would get confused in, you would say, oh, culture, this is culture, not Islam. Not quite. Not everything that your parents are actually speaking of is necessarily culture to mean anti-Islam. It actually has more roots in Islam than anything else. On the other hand, I know this is going to sound offensive. Girl, I was born here. I was born in Minnesota. My mom was born in Chicago. So I'm pretty much an all-American girl. Yes, I've got Palestinian roots, but also Mexican and, South American, Latina roots. At the end of the day, I'm a whole combination of everything. My husband is Tunisian from a different planet. So at the end, all right, at the end of the day, is that I understand that when somebody would tell you that because you grew up in a society that is generally not Muslim, you are more susceptible and more likely to actually have a culture that does not have Muslim roots than otherwise. I know that sounds offensive, but that's the truth that we don't want to hear. Because your thought, it's extremely hard for you to actually separate yourself from all the different factors and the different categories that made up who you are. There's so many different things. Why did you consider this right or wrong? Why? It's so hard for you to recognize that it basically traces back not to Islam, and definitely it was not objective at all. It was actually coming in with so many different forces that surround you within the society that you're living in. Now, going back to just some of the implications of what we're talking about. Piercing, for example. The idea of piercing, we would just think of it as, oh, it's just a piercing. Just an issue of cosmetics. He's just trying to look good, right? But here's one thing, is that what actually scares me about a lot of the different cosmetics is that when Iblis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quoted Iblis in the Quran that he said, and I will order them to change the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, he was actually using that as a method in order to get to your heart, to let you focus on your appearance. And the focus on the appearance is not an issue of just focusing on the appearance. It's in order to make you focus on the outside rather than the inside. And then that's why when you actually look at the different groups at the time, my time, I'm 43, right? My time, they were called punks. Today, I don't know what they call them during your time. What do they call them? What do you guys call them during your time? You don't know? It was in the 80s. No, emos are different. Those are taken. No, those are different. Anyhow, those are different. All right. So they would basically, you know, put all this hairspray and spiky and all of those different things. So what happened? No, those emos are different. Okay. Emos are different. Yeah, it's totally different. I know what emos are. All right. So at the end of the day is that it's basically a culture to focus and regenerate an idea that, of course, it will made to be seeming like it was me trying to express my identity. But in the truth of the matter, it's actually trying to reflect absurdity. Why absurdity? Because absurdity is actually the main exact core of the faith of atheism. It's rejecting paradigm. It's rejecting standard. It's rejecting norms. It's rejecting any structure that defines ethics. So when you actually look at a lot of the different practices, I would just basically say, be careful in adopting the different practices, especially in cosmetics, because they're not of any less dangerous than the ideas. Because the ideas, yes, they deal with the box up there, but the cosmetics, they deal with the box in here, my friend. They deal with the box in your heart, because it's how you identify yourself. If you identify yourself that I'm part of this group and I'm trying to seek attention, then girl, you've got some workout to do. You've got some cleaning, purification to do. You need to work on the inside. And that's why it's an issue of recorrecting our place of vision on the inside. Because if that box is contaminated, girl, this box is going to get contaminated. And they both work together. We got to clean that up. If we don't recognize that place of contamination, we're going to lose our identity without us realizing. Now, here's the thing. If I were to answer the question, is piercing halal or haram? If I don't actually put it within the trace of what is more dangerous than a practical piece of it, then I'm getting the whole idea in the wrong place. It's exactly like somebody getting a fever and probably getting different symptoms, and they're trying to work on the fever rather than actually work on what's causing the fever, which could be something dangerous like leukemia. And if you're trying to put all these different cold compressions and all these different things, and you're not healing leukemia, you're killing the person. And that's the same thing. To actually answer the question whether piercing is halal or haram, whether microblading is halal or haram, we first have to answer the main core of the perspective. Where are your brain feedings coming from? What's going on? What's going inside the box right up there? What's going inside the box right in here? Be careful with that. Did I answer that one?
Yeah.
Kind of, okay. So generally speaking, on the Islamic side of it, there are differences of opinions between scholars, but I feel that that's a wrong answer.
No, I just feel like there's always something new, right? People are going to Turkey to like get surgeries of their hair. Like there's so many like new things that comes out every day.
Surgeries for the hair is not haram. Surgery for the hair is not haram. Microblading, because it involves tattooing, is haram because it's rechanging the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Harming your body in piercing or harming your body in those different things are basically haram because of the fact that it's actually harming your body for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not allow. In general, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you your body is an amanah, and you should not harm it. But when we're talking about, the hair and, for example, certain cosmetics, if they are to restore some kind of a deformality, it is permissible. But of course, when you're microblading, it's not restoring a deformality, it's actually bringing in a different combination, a different component in there. I hope I answered that one. I know I went across my boundaries, but I think that's actually more important than the fiqh questions. It's when you work on the box up there, trust me, it's more important than a lot of the different questions out there. You go ahead. You want to ask more questions?
No, unfortunately, the panel is over. We're gonna be starting a new panel on balancing careers. So alhamdulillah, thank you so much for answering all the questions we can. Maybe there could be a way we can email you some of the questions and post it, inshallah. There's always ways that we can answer the questions.
So the easiest way, like go on to I put you the WhatsApp group thingy.
Yes.
Yep, so the WhatsApp group, and you can actually join that WhatsApp group, and the email, I'm basically the admin, so you can actually WhatsApp me and all of that, and you can also join my classes there.
Yes, so definitely we will
All right.
get those resources out to anyone. I apologize if we didn't get to answer any of your questions, inshallah, but I know that we'll come together again.